Welcome to this week's Jackson County Board of Commissioners meeting. Your Board of Commissioners, overseeing these dedicated county departments. And now, your county commissioners, working together for the citizens of Jackson County.
Would you get your wife for? Oh, I'm sorry.
Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners regular meeting here on this Wednesday morning, February 15th, day after Valentine's Day and the birthday of the great state of Oregon, here at the Jackson County Courthouse. We start the proceedings with the pledge, and I've asked John Weil, our Roads and Parks Director, to lead us in that. If you would, please, John. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, John. The first item on the agenda this morning is a request and discussion of non-agenda items. Members of the audience may address any item on the agenda. State statute prohibits the members of the Board of Commissioners from discussing a principal subject that is not on the agenda, but the Board of Commissioners does listen to your concerns and may ask staff to follow up on any questions you arise. Are there any requests for non-agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move to the next agenda item, 2000, consent calendar. 200.1 meeting minutes of meetings, Board of Commissioners work session meeting of February 7th, 2012. Board of Commissioners regular meetings February 1st and 8th, 2012. And the order appointing Alice Dixie Taylor to the Animal Control Advisory Committee, our order number 31-12. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent calendar as presented.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call?
Commissioner Rasher?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Spencer?
Yes, consent calendar has been approved. The next item is 3000, the public hearings segment, and we have none this morning. So we'll move on to discussion and deliberation 4000. The first one of those is 4001, order in the matter of the Board of Commissioners initiating review of Land Development Ordinance, Section 7.2, floodplain overlay, order 32-12. Danny?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Jackson County has had a section of our land development ordinance that regulates development within the 100-year floodplain since 1973. In 1982, Jackson County adopted a flood insurance study prepared by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and maps associated with that study, which are the flood insurance rate maps and the flood boundary and floodway map. The initial use of this information was to convert Jackson County to a regular program of flood insurance by FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program. Jackson County did update the floodplain overlay in April of 2011, and FEMA determined that update in the new section of Jackson County Land Development Ordinance was in compliance with the performance standards for the National Flood Insurance Program. Since that floodplain overlay has been in effect, development issues have surfaced, and Development Services has determined that minor text amendment changes are needed, which are needed in order to better serve the residents of our county. Pursuant to Land Development Ordinance Section 3.8.2, Item A, the Board of Commissioners or the Jackson County Planning Commission or the White City Planning Commission may initiate text amendments to the Land Development Ordinance. In this case, what you're doing is just initiating that review process. Of course, there'll be the hearings process that will come before you that will identify specifically what those needed changes are. So in this case, the funds for this project are budgeted as part of the Development Services Comprehensive Planning Division's budget, and I do recommend your approval.
Thank you. Gentlemen, comments, questions?
Well, I just have a question in my simple terms. This ordinance just allows us the ability to make amendments. It's just opening the amendment process, so to speak.
This is just initiating and thereby allowing Development Services to begin a process for you to consider changes in the ordinance.
And would any change that we make, or the Planning Commission or the White City Planning Commission, would that be reviewed by LUBA eventually? And would it need their approval?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If you make changes through the public hearings process and you adopt those changes and they become part of the land development ordinance without an appeal, then they don't go to LUBA. If someone were to appeal changes that you made, then it likely would be appealed to LUBA.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
And that's the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Yeah, and I think if there was any real substantive changes, FEMA would have something to say about that as well, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of order number 32-12 as presented by the county administrator.
I will second that.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
Yes.
Yes. So ordered and approved. Moving on, 40.02, order in the matter of setting fees for temporary restaurant inspections. Order number 32-12. Danny.
Right, Mr. Chair, in this case, I will say the state of Oregon, and I'll make that very clear that the state of Oregon, through the Oregon Health Authority, proposed new Oregon administrative rules that will require new fees for service. So the implementation of these new rules was not done by the county, it was done by the state. The proposed OAR, which is OAR 333-012-0053, will include the following language, and these are the points in the Oregon administrative rule that make the relevant need for setting the fee. Item number 7 is the local public health authority may adopt a fee schedule for seasonal temporary restaurants and intermittent temporary restaurants that require what's called a recheck inspection. I'll explain that in a second. Seasonal temporary restaurants are operational for up to 90 days, and intermittent temporary restaurants are operational for up to 30 days at a time. Item 8 is the local public health authority may set a fee for costs associated with conducting an operational review in accordance with guidelines established by the Oregon Health Authority. This is really a plan of operation that the vendor will submit that's reviewed. It's a written plan on paper to look at how the facility will operate, whether it be a seasonal temporary restaurant or an intermittent temporary restaurant. Although Jackson County does currently conduct inspections of temporary restaurants, the state's proposed operational reviews and recheck inspections would be additional services that have not previously been established nor for which a fee has been previously established. Setting fees for temporary restaurant inspections will help to cover the county's costs associated with these additional services. Just as a reminder, the environmental health program, which does restaurant inspections and is housed in our Health and Human Services program, is dependent solely upon the fees from conducting the requirements that the law requires of the county for having those vendors in our county. Operational review and recheck inspections help ensure that temporary restaurants in Jackson County meet state standards for temporary restaurants. The county conducted an analysis of the projected cost for these services, which resulted in the following new fee calculations. So the county does have a process by where we evaluate what something will cost. It's a written document that anyone can review and request and inspect to evaluate the logic the county used to do this. And in this case, the temporary restaurant operational review is set at $47, and the temporary restaurant recheck inspection is set at $62. If I might say that these were primarily targeting what was commonly referred to here in our county as growers markets, but it could also include things such as the harvest fair, where each week in a month, vendors meet to sell goods and services that qualify as restaurants or temporary or intermittent restaurants. Those are a couple of examples of where this could affect people in our county. Right now, what happens is someone applies for either a temporary or intermittent or a seasonal temporary restaurant. They'll apply for an operational review. That fee is to be set at $47, as I said. After that operational review is done, what the county has had in place is an inspection for a temporary restaurant license. That's not something you're approving today. It already exists. That costs $105. It costs $105 regardless of if you're operating one day or 365 days a year. And then there's the temporary recheck inspection, which I said is $62. That's when someone submits their operational review or their plan, the county reviews it, then they go out to do the temporary restaurant inspection. If everything is okay in that temporary restaurant inspection, they will not be re-inspected either in that 30-day period that they operate or that 90-day period they operate unless a complaint is received. except for if in the initial review, which issues their license, they find an issue of compliance by the vendor, they will have to come back at a later date and recheck it if it can't be remedied at that point. So that is what the recheck inspection is for. To the point they have to return to recheck that, they'll continue to charge a fee. So if the vendor remedies it, then they won't go back and inspect again or charge a fee unless there's a complaint made against the agency.
So it's complaint-driven.
It's estimated that these fees actually will generate less than $2,000 a year in annual revenue, so we're talking a very small portion of course, the revenue that the department receives, and a small number of these to be needed to be done. If approved, the fees will become effective March 1st of 2012, or on such date that OAR 333-012-0053 is revised to include temporary restaurant inspections. In other words, it's in a temporary rulemaking process, which is a complicated, I wouldn't say complicated, but it's a process for actually formally adopting a rule, and it's temporary to begin with, and it becomes permanent after a period of time. We're passing this fee, assuming it becomes permanent. If it does not become permanent, we won't charge the fee and we won't do the work. If it does become permanent, we're prepared to operate as needed. In the event in this case, as I said, it's in the event you pass this and it's implemented, it'd be a $2,000 annual revenue estimated, and I do recommend your approval.
Okay, thank you for that long explanation. It does get a little sticky. Commissioners?
Well, I have a question, Danny, and you might not know that. Do you know how this works operationally? When they go out to re-inspect someone, will they collect that fee from them at that time, or will we bill them?
They won't sign off on the re-check inspection until they receive payment. So if they want to not pay immediately, they won't get signed off for operations. So technically, temporary, intermittent, or seasonal temporary restaurant will have to pay for the recheck at the time of the recheck to be licensed.
Well, the problem I see with that is if you have a minimum wage person working in that facility and someone comes in and says you need to pay $62, they may be reluctant to pay that fee. They may say, well, wait, I don't have authorization to give someone that I don't know $62 or someone with a badge or whatever. So I'm a little concerned about that.
At the time they do the initial inspection, if they identify something, they will, and this happens actually at this point now, it's just if they identify a need for a correction, they will allow the owner, the vendor, a certain amount of time to correct it and agree to come back and inspect on a certain day. So it's not a pop-in inspection.
Okay.
It's if the owner chooses not to be there, we don't control that, but they'll, it depends on what the issue is. They may be able to come back because they won't be licensed to operate the restaurant unless they correct the issue. Assuming that it's something that affects health or safety standards, which is the reason why we inspect restaurants. And so if they can come back the next day, they may come back the next day. If the owner, if it's a fire suppression issue and they need 3 or 4 days to go buy equipment and install it, then, it's gauged based on what the issue is.
Yeah, I appreciate Danny's clarifying some of the questions that we had in the work session regarding this. And I appreciate Commissioner Rasher's insight into the restaurant business and the inspection process. It's pretty valuable.
Do you think he went through any of those?
I bet you did.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. If I had a crew member there, they would be reluctant to pay someone that popped in and said, give her $62.
Well, I think
Looks like we've addressed it.
Yeah, I think Danny's addressed that pretty well. I think the important thing to remember on this is that, number one, we're following something that's set out from the state. Number two is that the recheck inspection only has to happen if, in fact, 2 ways. Number one, when they do the operational check, they find something that isn't right, so the inspector will have to come back after that's fixed, or we get a complaint from a customer. So that's not something we're just going to pop around. The other thing I wanted to say is I think Jackson County, if I understand correctly, from Jackson Barris, who's in charge of environmental health, said that I think we're one of the few, if not the only county, that actually has made every one of all the restaurants at least once a year, which is pretty good. And so I think that says a lot for our staff. I do have one final question though. So if I'm opening a Geedunk stand, I'm paying the $47 for my operational review. and $105 for my permit, or whatever that's called, so I'm paying $152. And saying that I have everything in line, that's what I'm paying, is $152, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, good.
For the environmental health inspections, you may have other fees not associated
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, I meant, okay.
Is
All
a
right.
Gee Dunk stand like a Dunkin' Donuts or what?
No, yet, it's an old service term. I thought you would know that. You're old service.
I
Gee
wasn't
Dunks.
that old a service.
I didn't understand it, but I just kind of
You don't,
improvised.
oh, yeah, well, we'll discuss this at a later date. but,
It's a Navy issue.
It is yes, it is a Navy issue, that's right, exactly right. Okay, let's move on here.
Well, Mr. Chair, I move approval of
thank
Board Order
you.
number 33-12 as presented by the county administrator.
I will second that.
Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. The next item and the last item we have on the agenda is 40.03, an order in the matter of initiating a local improvement district, commonly referred to as an LID, to improve a portion of West Jackson Road and the intersection of Highway 99, in Ashland, Oregon, Section 31, Township 38, South Range, 1 east of the Willamette Meridian. This is Board Order number 34-12. Danny?
All right, Mr. Chair, first let me say there is a map of this in your packet in the work session. You asked that you have a map of the location. Next, Jackson County did receive a petition for the local improvement district, which will include an improvement, realignment, and signalization of West Jackson Road at Highway 99 in Ashland. The petition contains signatures of 100% of owners of the land, which is unusual. Generally, we don't get 100% petition. This is within the boundary of the proposed assessment district and represents 100% of the land abutting the proposed improvement. Improvement is to be constructed in a manner to meet standards acceptable to Jackson County. In this case, Mr. Chair, what this order does is it just initiates, in other words, directs the county road department to study the feasibility of this. After such time, they'll bring back the results of their study. So I guess I'm telling you, this order just initiates that study. But I want to tell you that the process following that is they'll bring back that study with a recommendation for you to either decide to initiate or not initiate the district. At the time they bring back the recommendation, you'll recall that the previous Board of Commissioners did pass a local ordinance that is in addition to the requirements of state law that allow a public hearing at the time that recommendation is made to you. That was mostly done because there were past instances where local improvement districts were created that didn't have 100% petition, and the people that didn't want to be included didn't have the opportunity to tell you why you shouldn't initiate it. After following that public hearing, the board will then decide to initiate or not initiate. That'll be the last action the board takes while the project is being constructed and reviewed. And then after the project is finalized, it comes back to you for one more hearing to explain the methodology for assessment for repayment to the county for the improvements. And at that time, the board really has no option to not approve it, but there is a public hearing required by state law. So in this case, initiating the study is something that I do recommend you approve based on the fact that there are 100% petition, but just want you and the public to know that there'll be further opportunities for the public to comment on it.
Very good, thank you. Gentlemen?
Just as a quick question, is that at the south end of town or the north end?
Be the north end.
North end, okay.
Right across from the Ford dealership.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right.
Commissioner?
No, I can't imagine why someone would contest this. That's a nightmare trying to get over to Jackson Road with all the muffler shop and things the way it is now. So this will intersect at a 90-degree angle. It's good.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of Board Order number 34-12 as presented by the county administrator.
I will second that.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes the items on the agenda. I just want to point out once again, I think it's been stated, I know Chairman Smith did this past year several times, and but I do want to reiterate to the folks out there that are curious about when we have board orders here or agenda items on here, it's pretty quickly stated. Those have been vetted through a work session, one sort of another, a public meeting. And also on our webpage, you can go on all the information that the administrator reads during the presentation is available on our website, and so you can go on that if people want to go in and take a look and see exactly if they didn't quite follow what Danny was saying at the moment or something. I just want to make sure that is public information and it's readily available if you should so wish. So with that, thank you very much, and I adjourn this meeting at about 9:50. Thank you.
You've been watching the weekly Jackson County Board of Commissioners meeting, held every Wednesday morning at 9:30. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact the commissioners at 774-6116. You can also visit www.jacksoncounty.org and click on Video and TV Center to view many of the county's latest public meetings, informational videos, and studio programs.